All right, my name is Kristin Gardner. I'm Executive Director of the Gallatin River Task Force, and I'm going to try to summarize all the water quality data that we've collected over the past 16 years or have been involved in the collection. So water quality monitoring has always been a big focus of our organization. We were founded to collect water quality information. We've expanded our programming, but water quality monitoring is still a really important part of what we do. So I thought I'd go through when we've collected data, what data we've collected, and where, to give you an idea of all the data that's out there. Just in case you want to dig a little deeper, you can contact me and I can give you all that information. So the task force started collecting data in 2000. We were the local liaison for the Montana Department of Environmental Quality TMDL assessments that you've heard about already this afternoon. So that was between 2005 and 2010. Over that time period, we added sites to our routine water quality monitoring program because of information that we learned through the TMDL assessments. We also added 4 continuous water stream flow stations in the West Fork watershed. So we have 4 stations, 2 on the West Fork, 1 on the South Fork, and 1 on the North Fork. We also were part of an assessment to look at the golf course because we found that as a source of nutrients to the stream. So we wanted to look at that more in depth. And so that study happened in 2009. In 2012, we added 2 more sites to our routine water quality monitoring on the Middle Fork and South Fork. We also started looking at chloride and sediment. And then finally last year we added an additional 2 sites to our routine monitoring, one on the Taylor Fork and then another one in Yellowstone National Park on the main stem Gallatin, and that's sort of our pristine site to compare all of our data to. We're also interested in looking at seasonal trends because they can give you some insight on the sources of pollution to the watershed. So we monitor in the winter. We monitor just before snowmelt, during runoff, and then during summer, and we want to capture varying conditions in the stream flow and also varying conditions in the biological activity in the streams. We monitor a whole slew of parameters. So in the stream, we monitor temperature, pH, dissolved oxygen, nitrate, phosphorus, E. coli, total coliform, conductivity, turbidity, chloride, total dissolved solids. We also look at sediment size distribution, aquatic insects, algae, stream flow at those 4 stations that I mentioned. And then this is where we monitor. So we're really focused in the southern portion of the Upper Gallatin Watershed. We go as far north as the Jack Smith Bridge, just upstream of that. We have a lot of sites in the West Fork Watershed and then 5 sites south of the Big Sky area. So this map kind of tells you when we added those different sites if you're interested in that. So to summarize what we found through the task force routine water quality monitoring, we have not seen any significant long-term trends. We have healthy levels of most constituents. We do see differences among streams. So we see elevated nitrogen in the Middle Fork, West Fork, as well as chloride. We also have seen elevated algae in all 3 forks up here in the Big Sky drainage, Middle Fork, South Fork, West Fork. We also see some seasonal trends like increased chloride just before runoff. We see a high turbidity at runoff, which you would all expect. The highest nitrate we see is in the wintertime generally, and then E. coli is also highest in the summertime. Some of the inferences we found from the aquatic invertebrate sampling is that they have confirmed the excess nitrogen in the West Fork watershed. They've also suggested some disrupted riparian function as well as unstable stream banks. And that was mainly on the main stem Gallatin. And then we've had a couple of hits of high sediment in the Middle Fork and the West Fork. To briefly summarize the TMDL study, so we have 3 TMDLs that we're working with in the West Fork watershed. There is a nutrient TMDLs for the Middle Fork, South Fork, and West Fork. And the assumed sources are fertilizer, wastewater from both irrigation onto the golf course and septic systems, land clearing, and stormwater runoff. Our sediment TMDLs are on the Middle Fork, South Fork, West Fork, and the sediment sources are all associated with resort and residential development, so erosion, logging, and removal of riparian areas and such. And then we have one E. coli TMDL on the Middle Fork, and the assumed sources for that E. coli is pet and wildlife waste and stormwater runoff. I mentioned the more in-depth study that we did on the golf course. So we saw a big jump in nitrogen concentrations from the upstream portion of the golf course to the downstream, but we didn't have any information in between. And so in 2009, we did an in-depth study on the golf course looking at nitrogen and chloride, and some of the results showed increasing nitrate and chloride throughout the stretch, so that is indicative of a wastewater source through that stretch. And then we also saw increasing water levels, nitrogen, chloride, and the heavier isotope of nitrate, which were found in the groundwater wells on the northern side of the golf course as well as in the stream. And that suggests that the watering that the golf course does in the pastures at the end of the year sometimes to get rid of some of the wastewater effluent is impacting the stream. Another in-depth assessment that we are working on is monitoring the impacts of the wastewater effluent spill on the South Fork. And so what we found so far is that there were no health standards that were violated. There were 2 aquatic life standards that were exceeded, one for ammonia at the 2 upstream sites that were closest to the spill, and then the turbidity standard was exceeded for all the affected streams during that sort of first couple week time period. We're still monitoring, well, not anymore, but we monitored through the summer. We looked at water quality, we did some habitat assessments, fish surveys, and we should have all that data by, we're thinking late fall, and so hopefully a report will be out early winter to discuss our findings. I wanted to briefly touch upon the MSU research that's been done up here. We have a ton of data up here on nutrients. I did my doctoral research on nutrient concentrations in the West Fork watershed, and some of my colleagues also looked at nitrogen variability, so probably way more than you want to know. But I have the papers up on our website if you're interested. We do know that geology has an influence on some of the spatial variability in nitrogen that we see up here. We do know that the algae growth that we see in some of the streams is controlled both by nitrogen and phosphorus. There's great variability in the nutrient concentrations and sources throughout the year. For example, on the West Fork, we see really high concentrations in the winter, lower in the summer, and then up in the Meadow Village area, we see really high concentrations year-round. But the nitrate concentrations that are found in the upper elevations don't appear to be from wastewater. So we've learned a lot from that, but there's still more to figure out. And we've, lastly, biological update masks the concentrations of nitrogen that we see during the growing season. There is research still going on by MSU students, and this is a really, really cool information, hot off the press from July. It shows that not only is there variability in nutrient concentrations throughout the year, but significant diurnal fluctuation of nitrogen throughout the day, which is pretty cool. And I'm really interested to see what she finds out, but you can see that during the day when algae is photosynthesizing, it's using nitrogen, and then at night it's not, and it's not using that nitrogen, and you see the concentrations go way up again. And you can see those same sort of diurnal fluctuations in temperature, oxygen, and light as well. And so lastly, I want to touch upon about what we're doing about all this data that we've collected and the information that we've learned. So we've used the data to really guide our restoration projects and our educational and outreach projects. And so we do have an Upper Gallatin Watershed Restoration Plan that Jeff touched upon. We're really focusing on reducing nitrogen in the West Fork watershed. We have that restoration project on the golf course that Jeff talked about. We have held multiple educational workshops for realtors, for landscapers, the Big Sky Golf Course, and stormwater workshops for builders. We've just developed a septic system brochure we're going to be distributing this fall. We've installed a bunch of dog waste stations around the community. Maybe you've seen those. And lastly, I want to talk about our Gallatin River access restoration projects that we're working on with the Forest Service. And these are to really reduce erosion, improve riparian areas, and increase safety at all the river access sites. And our pilot project is scheduled to break ground in September, which I'm super excited about. So yeah, there we go. All of the reports and all the data is available on our website, so I encourage you to look at our website on the resources page. You can find that, or contact me anytime. I'd be more than happy to help you.